Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another edition of the Sulaimaan Ravat show. Yes, it's a Friday evening. Once again, we are coming to you live from our studios here in Sunning Hill, Johannesburg. We already have reached now the middle of November. What a year 2020 has been. What a year. Whoever is alive 30 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, they will talk about this year 2020, won't they? How much, we thought things will play out in a particular way and then how it played out in a totally different way. I suppose the Almighty Allah shows us that you can plan, but I am the best of planners. Things are a bit okay at the moment here in South Africa, although as we heard President Ramaphosa earlier this week, once again stressing and emphasizing that it's important for us to not take things for granted, not to become complacent. He said, look, he understands that there's corona fatigue. He understands that complacency has set in because we are now going through a period of low infection. But the last thing we need is to see in South Africa what those in the UK and other such countries are seeing in terms of a second wave. Nice, beautiful Friday evening, warm day today. During the course of this week in the Joburg region, we had a number of overcast and cool days with quite a bit of rain here and there. It looks like we're in for a warm weekend. Right, so in the first half of this program, we're talking about communication. Our guest is going to be Moulana Yusuf Patel. He is the Secretary General of the United Ulama Council of South Africa. He is an alim and a scholar based in Middelburg. Now, why communication? Communication is deeply intertwined with our human existence. You cannot even think about human life without communication. Try to imagine just for a moment that you're living but you can't communicate. How will you live? You require communication in every aspect of your life. And the better you can communicate, the more effective you can communicate, the greater the chances of success in your private life as well as in your professional life. It allows you and it allows other people to understand better. And those who are poor at communicating, you see, communicating is not only about the ability to speak or, knowing a particular language. It's communicating. And if you do not communicate properly, then there's going to be misunderstanding, there's going to be suspicion, there's going to be frustration. How many wars have not started because of poor communication or incorrect communication? Marriages have broken because of poor communication. Relationships have suffered. Business deals have not materialized or prospered. On the other hand, when you don't communicate properly, you deprive yourself of a lot of success, a lot of happiness, a lot of opportunity. So that's why we're talking about communication today with Moulana Yusuf Patel, who, as I said, joins us via Zoom this evening, live from Middelburg in Mpumalanga. Moulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the program. I understand it's quite hot in your part of the country as well.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you, Moulana, and to the viewers of ITV. Yes, it is indeed a very hot evening in Middelburg.
All right, to give context to our discussion, Moulana, how important is communication in determining our relationship with people and in enhancing the quality of our lives?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think it may be appropriate to make reference to the beginning verses of Surah Rahman, where Allah says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. In this verse, or in these verses, we are reminded of three distinct favors that Allah has blessed humanity with purely out of His abounding mercy and grace. The three favors are, firstly, He says that He taught us the Quran. The Quran is a treasure from heaven given to humanity. He then says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ, He created man in the best of mold. And after that, He says, عَلَّمَهُ الْبَيَانِ, He has taught us the ability to think, to reflect, to express ourselves and communicate. So our ability to communicate sets us apart from the rest of creation. The single most important skill we require as we journey through life is the art of communication. As you have said, our relationship with our family, with friends, with colleagues, depends on how we communicate. Effective communication is therefore the foundation of strong relationships with others, be it at home, socially, in education, or in the workplace. The ability to communicate information correctly, clearly, and as intended is a vital life skill and something that should never be overlooked. It's never too late to work on our communication skills. And by doing so, we may well find that we improve our quality of life.
You know, Moulana, when we talk about good communication, right, we generally refer to a person's ability to speak clearly, to speak fluently, to speak precisely. Is an eloquent speaker a good communicator?
I think many of us think that when we talk of communication, it's only about our ability to talk fluently, precisely, and eloquently. However, that is but one part of communication. Good communicators are people who have excellent listening skills. In fact, since we have 2 ears and only one mouth, listening just might be the more important skill. We receive almost no training in good listening and usually do not realize that listening is not simply a passive activity. So to answer your question, communication is made up of 3 different but interrelated soft skills. Number 1, it is the art of listening. Number 2, it is the spoken word, verbal communication. And number 3, it comprises of non-verbal communication.
So, interestingly there, Moulana, you speak about passive and active listening. Tell us what's the difference between the two?
Well, we often confuse hearing with listening. Hearing is a passive activity. Listening is an active activity. The two are very different, though both are done with our ears. Hearing is a natural function of the ear, which involves the reception of sound. It is one of our senses. Listening, however, is an active activity that requires the presence of mind. In the Quran, when Allah speaks about the rise and fall of nations, Allah says, "Inna fi dhalika la dhikra liman kana lahu qalbun aw alqa as-sam'a wa huwa shaheed." That certainly in that means in the rise and fall of nations, are lessons for those who lend an ear, wa huwa shaheed, with the presence of mind. So lending an ear with absence of mind is hearing. Doing so with the presence of mind is listening. And the tragedy is that we are generally taught how to speak, but rarely how to listen. There are different levels of listening. One is inactive listening. That is where you are hearing the words, but your mind may be wandering elsewhere. The old adage, in one ear and out the other, can best describe inactive listening or passive listening. The Quran describes the conduct of the munafiqeen when it says, "Walla mustakbiran." He turns away in arrogance, كَأَن لَمْ يَسْمَعْهَا, as if he did not hear them. كَأَنَّ فِي أُذُنَيْهِ وَقْرًا, as if there is a deafness in his ears. Now, inactive listening is where you hear the word, but you refuse to listen to the message. Then we have selective listening. This is where you hear only what you want to hear. Selective listening occurs when you stop giving thought to what a person is saying and you are preoccupied in formulating your opinion or your answer or response to what is being said. Selective listening is a sign of failing communication. You cannot hope to understand if you filter out some of the messages based on your preconceived ideas of what has been said or because of emotionally difficult circumstances. Then you have active listening. As an active listener, you listen not only to the content, but to the intent of the message as well. It involves paying attention to the conversation, not interrupting, and taking time to understand what the speaker is really saying. So that's the one segment of good communication, the art of listening.
I think it's such an important and a profound explanation because our general understanding and perception is that if a person is a talker, if he's got the gift of the gab, if he speaks a lot, then he's a good communicator. But as you just explained, Moulana, a good communication is more about active listening than your eloquence in speech. It's time for us to take a quick break. When we come back, we continue the discussion on communication with Moulana Yusuf Patel. Welcome back. So we're talking about the importance of communication with Moulana Yusuf Patel. Moulana is with us via Zoom from Middelburg. Prior to the break, Moulana spoke about the importance of communication in determining our relationship with people and enhancing the quality of our lives. Moulana also spoke that about an eloquent speaker is not necessarily a good communicator. Communication has got more to do with your ability to listen than your ability to speak. Of course, you need to be able to speak clearly and precisely. And Moulana took us through the different types of listening. Passive listening, where you listen without presence of mind, selective listening, and active listening. Moulana, if we look at the importance now of verbal communication, many times we are careless with the words we choose. Words can be helpful, it can also be hurtful. It can have a direct influence on the outcome of a situation. As we know, and we are constantly reminded, but it doesn't seem like we take heed, that when words exit your mouth, then irrespective of the amount of apologies thereafter, you can't pull them back. It's like trying to close the door or trying to shut the gate after the horse is bolted.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Studies have shown that the average person speaks at least 7,000 words a day, with many people speaking far more than that. Now think about what that means to you. Those 7,000 words you speak each day are your imprint on the world. They dictate how people perceive you, and largely they define who you are. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has said, Inna min al-bayani la-sihra, that communication, the way you speak, can have a magical impact and influence on people. The words you use can make a person cry or laugh. Words have the power to inspire or demoralize. Words can lift us up or drag us down. They can wound us deeply or heal our hearts. So words have the power to build confidence or break confidence, build lifelong alliances, or as you have said, even start wars. Poorly chosen words can kill enthusiasm, it impacts on self-esteem, it lowers expectations and generally holds people back. So the words that you utter have the power to either build or destroy relationships. Allah speaks about the power of speech in the Quran and says, وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي, tell my slaves, يَقُولُ, to say, to speak with that which is best, because the devil sows discord among them. And so words can actually destroy relationships. Words can serve as the glue that binds people or the acid that destroys relationships. One example is that oftentimes we express our anger instead of explaining our anger. And when we express anger instead of explaining anger, we then destroy relationships. We create a hostile environment, and in the long term, destroy, brotherly love, destroy a relationship between spouses, between parent and child, etc. Another verse in the Quran says, Allah speaks to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam when he was told to go to Fir'aun, and Allah instructed him to speak to Fir'aun mildly. Perhaps he may accept action or fear Allah. We must not forget that Allah is sending Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to Fir'aun. And Allah is who claimed to be God. And Allah advises Musa alayhi salam, if you want Fir'aun to be receptive, let's speak in a gentle manner, because that may allow him to think of, your message. So well-chosen words can motivate, offer hope, create, impact on a person's thinking. It makes people receptive to what you have to say. The important principle is that people do not only hear what you say, they also feel what is said. They may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So, it was Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu who used to say that the heart of a fool sits on his tongue, and the tongue of a wise man is located in his heart. And I think that sufficiently expresses the power of the spoken word.
So you've explained, Moulana, about verbal communication. Earlier on, we spoke about listening and active listening being very much part of good communication. What about the aspect of non-verbal expression being part of good communication? Can you explain that and unpack that for us?
Well, human communication does not stop at the spoken word, but it goes beyond that to include movement of the body and its parts, such as the face, the eyes, and the hands. Studies have shown that in the process of communication, non-verbal expression has 65%, between 65 to 93% more influence than the actual spoken word. This means that how to say is far more important than what to say. So when we talk about non-verbal communication, we're talking about our posture, our physical movement, our eye contact, etc.
Can you give us examples of that from the Quran and Sunnah, non-verbal communication?
The Quran and Sunnah abound with body language. For example, in Allah says in Surah 31, verse 18, وَلَا تُسَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا. Turn not away your cheek from people in pride, and walk not haughtily on the earth. This verse refers to speaking with your face and your body movement. Turning your face away from people sends a message or demonstrates contempt, arrogance, and conceit. And in the like manner, the manner you walk also sends a message. It can send a message of humility or superiority, self-importance, and pride. So when the Quran says, do not turn your cheek away from people, it's actually referring to your body language. It sends messages all the time. Another example of body language is where Allah refers to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and says, قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ. We have seen you turning your face to heaven, towards the skies, in hope and anticipation of the change of the Qibla. Again, your facial expression can reveal a sense of yearning, longing, hope. It can also reveal fear, anxiety. If you listen to what if you only listen to what the person says and ignore what that person's face is telling you, then you really only have half the story. Another example of body language is a verse in the Quran where Allah says, عَبَسَ وَتَوَلَّى أَنْ جَاءَهُ الْأَعْمَى. He frowned and turned away because a blind man approached him. Again, a frown is a manifestation of an emotion, an expression of disappointment, displeasure, and dissatisfaction. This verse shows that oftentimes we speak with our forehead. Another example is Allah refers to the action and response of the disbelievers when Wahi was revealed. And Allah says, whenever a surah is revealed, نَظَرَ بَعْضُهُمْ إِلَى بَعْضٍ. They look at each other mockingly. We've all heard the old age saying that the eyes are the window to the soul. Eye contact is one of the easiest and most powerful ways to make a person feel recognized, understood, and validated. The way eye contact also can display a sense of aversion, dislike, or disgust. So in this verse, we learn about speaking with the eyes. Another example from the Sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam is that a Sahabi says, I did not see anyone smile more often than Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That is when we speak with our faces. The most overlooked and undervalued asset that we all possess is a smile. That is when we speak, when we acknowledge the presence of a person. We welcome a person, show our happiness at meeting an individual purely through the expression on our face. Another hadith says that when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam saw something he disliked, we could perceive it on his face. In other words, when someone pleased him, he acknowledged their efforts in a way that motivated them and inspired them to do better. And when he disliked something, without saying a word, the companions immediately saw the message on the face of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So these are a few instances of bodily language in the Quran and the Sunnah.
Fascinating examples. May Allah Ta'ala enable us to take heed and to improve the way we communicate. It's been a very interesting discussion. Maulana, any concluding thoughts from your side on the topic?
Well, effective communication, as we've discussed, is more than just speaking. We need to learn the art of listening. We need to be conscious of the way we express ourselves verbally, and we need to be equally conscious of the messages we send out through our or bodily language. So effective communication is about more than just exchanging information. It is about understanding the emotion and intentions behind the information. The way we communicate holds immense power. It has the power to open closed doors, or it has the power to shut open doors. Ultimately, communication determines the quality of our lives.
Maulana, shukran so much for your time and for that very enlightening discussion. We really appreciate it and we hope to have you on the program again soon, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That was Moulana Yusuf Patel from Middleburg for the last half an hour or so. He's been talking to us about the importance of communication. Very interesting points, that communication is more to do with your ability to actively listen. That's when you're listening with intent, with presence of mind. It has a lot to do with your non-verbal communication, your facial expressions, your body language, and he gave us great examples there from the Quran and Sunnah. We take a break. When we come back, we look at pearls of wisdom from the ongoing tafsir of Surah Yusuf. Welcome back. That was a really interesting and enlightening discussion with Moulana Yusuf Patel from Middleburg on communication. What is communication really? We all know that as human beings, we are interactive beings by nature. We communicate in some way or the other, different languages, even animals communicate. But what is communication? And he explained that very beautifully. Let's all endeavor to become better listeners. That's critical when it comes to communication. Let's endeavor to ensure that we listen actively. How many of us don't get caught out, you know? The wife is busy speaking and you're making yes, yes, yes. And she said, what did I say? You see, that's you don't know. I said, I heard, tell me, what did I say? And that's when you get caught out because it's passive listening. You were hearing. You're not listening. Listening is when you listen with presence of mind. When your heart is in it. Then also communication is about choosing your words, when you speak, how you speak, to whom you speak, choosing the right time, the right person, the right tone, the right words, all of those kind of things. And then, non-verbal communication, very critical as well. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam constantly smiling, the verbal expressions. Sometimes you just look at a person's body language and it speaks to you already before that person starts to open his or her mouth and then speak to you verbally. All right, so in recent weeks, we've been talking about certain lessons from Surah Yusuf, because I normally do the tafsir of Surah Yusuf in the mornings on the radio. And I think the last time we spoke was where Yusuf alayhi salam had planned on the instruction of Allah to have that special cup of his put in the luggage of his brother Binyamin when his brothers had come. The first time they came to Egypt, they wanted grain. They tried to get an extra share, telling him, we've got a brother Binyamin back home. He said, well, next time bring him with. And if you don't bring him with, it would mean you were lying. Then you'll get no share for anybody. So they convinced Yaqub alayhi salam and they brought him with. Now the cup was placed and it looked like he was guilty of theft. And they themselves had mentioned that according to the Sharia of Ibrahim alayhi salam, that if you steal from somebody, you must remain in their service for 1 year. So Binyamin was kept back. And then the eldest son Yehuda said, I can't face our father because we gave him our word that we will come back with Binyamin and we won't let what happened to Yusuf happen to Binyamin. Now, this was all part of the plan of Allah. Yusuf alayhi salam was acting upon the instructions of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. He was a Nabi. He had already been granted nubuwwah. When they come to their father, they tell their father the story. And now they know their father is going to have some reservation. So they say, وَاسْأَلِ الْقَرْيَةَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ فِيهَا وَالْعِيرَ الَّتِي أَقْبَلْنَا فِيهَا وَإِنَّا لَصَادِقُونَ. The dad, listen, ask the people of Egypt. They'll tell you. Right? They'll tell you that this is definitely what happened. Ask the people who were traveling with us in the caravan. They'll say this is definitely what happened. So Yaqub alayhi salam responded and said, بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا. This is another concoction of yours. Even though he was a Nabi, he was incorrect in his conclusion, because this time the sons were speaking the truth. But life is like that, when you speak a lie the first time, it could end up biting you the second time. It was no fault of Yaqub alayhi salam. He looked at the apparent. He said, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ. I will continue with patience, beautiful patience. Now, and this is what I concluded on, I think the last time we spoke. عَسَى اللَّهُ أَن يَأْتِيَنِي بِهِمْ جَمِيعًا. Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam had such optimism. He's in the depths of his grief. 40 years, or some scholars say 80 years of separation from Yusuf. Now the second most beloved son, Binyamin, also separated from him. And what happens now? The third son stays behind. So his grief does not only double, it triples. But imagine you suffer huge calamity in life and then it doubles and it triples. But at that time, he had so much of hope in Allah. He said, I have hope Allah will bring all three of my sons back to me. Innahu wal alimul hakim. He is the most knowing, the most wise. The scholars give a beautiful reasoning here. They say that why was Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam grieving so much? It's because Allah put so much of love for Yusuf alayhi salam in his heart, because Allah knew Allah was going to test him when it came to Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Like how Allah granted Ibrahim alayhi salam a son in old age, first child, and then Allah tested him. The friends of Allah are tested by Allah in a very different way, and it's only a prophet who could pass the test of this nature. He was the father, Yaqub alayhi salam, to all the sons. But Yusuf and Binyamin were from a different mother. And when Binyamin was born, the mother passed away. And Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was then brought up by Yaqub alayhi salam's sister before he was returned to Yaqub alayhi salatu wasalam. And Yaqub alayhi salam was really close and attached to Yusuf alayhi salam because of his external beauty and his internal beauty. Now when his sons come and tell him that, look, Binyamin is the one that Yaqub alayhi salam latched onto after the separation from Yusuf. So when they come and tell him that even Binyamin has been kept back, وَتَوَلَّى عَنْهُمْ, he now goes away from his sons. وَقَالَ يَا أَسَفَا عَلَى يُوسُف. He says, oh, my grief over Yusuf. Oh, my grief over Yusuf. وَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. Allah says that he became blind. His eyes lost their luster. They lost their sparkle because of the crying of so many years over the separation of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. But he consumed his grief. You know, like they say, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, you must consume your anger, meaning control it, manage it. Grief is natural, it's something you can't control, but managing it is within your control. And that is what is expected of you. So Yaqub alayhi salam did not complain to the public. He complained in private. He said, Ya asafa ala Yusuf. Oh, my grief over Yusuf. Oh, regret over Yusuf. The scholars write, this ummah has been blessed with very special words. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This is not only when a person passes away or when you get the news that the person has passed away. Of course, at that time you read it because that's the time when the calamity is at its highest. But even if it's 10 years later, you lost someone close to you, you think of them, and then your heart starts paining and aching, read Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Firstly, Allah will make it a tonic. It will be a balm, you know, for the pain of your heart. But you'll get the reward of patience. They say that, let's say, for example, you lose someone close to you. As soon as you get the news, read Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That's the time when the pain is at its highest. You say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. 10 years later, you miss that person. If you say it again, you get the same reward that you got at the time when you read it, when you just got the news or when the calamity just struck. So Yaqub alayhi salam did not have that in his sharia. That's why he said, Ya asafa ala Yusuf. Now he was criticized by his family. قالوا تالله تفتأ تذكر يوسف حتى تكون هردا أو تكون من الهالكين. How long are you going to continue like this? You know, remembering Yusuf and grieving over Yusuf. He's long gone, forget about him. He said, إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله. I'm complaining to Allah. My matter is with Allah. My hope is in Allah. وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know about Allah that which you do not know. Now he gives an instruction to his sons. يَا بَنِي يَذْهَبُوا فَتَحَسَّسُوا مِن يُوسُفَ وَأَخِيهِ وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا مِن رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِن رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. He said, okay, my boys, now you go. Look for Yusuf. Look for his brother, Binyamin. He doesn't mention Yehuda because Yehuda, you know, it's obvious he can return at any time. He voluntarily stayed back. So go and try and get Binyamin back. And at the same time, look for Yusuf. Up to this particular point, he'd never told them to look for Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Now he tells them. And he says that, do not become despondent of the mercy of Allah. It is only unbelievers who are despondent because believers know the situation is never beyond Allah. Nothing is bigger than the mercy and the power of Allah. Now they come back to Egypt for the third time. فَلَمَّا دَخَلُوا عَلَيْهِ. They come into the presence of Yusuf alayhi salam, who's the king of Egypt. He knows who they are, they don't know who he is. قَالُوا يَا أَيُّهَا الْعَزِيزِ. They say, oh Aziz, مَسَّنَا وَأَهْلَنَا الدُّرِّ. Listen, we are going through a torrid time. Because of the famine, because of the drought. And the first time we came, we paid, right? Even though Yusuf alayhi salam returned the money, put it back in the luggage. But now things were so bad because it was 7 years of drought, not 1, 2 years, 7 years of drought. They didn't even have any money, you know, or they didn't have any goods. They brought either deficient currency, وَجِئْنَا بِبِضَاعَةٍ مُزْجَةٍ, or they brought deficient goods. And they said, look, just allow us to barter. Normally, this kind of currency or this kind of goods is not accepted. But we're asking you, وَتَصَدَّقْ عَلَيْنَا, that, you know, be charitable to us. Accept what we're giving to you, even though it's substandard, and give us grain, give us food. Be charitable to us could also be that, look, give us the food we came for, but also give us our brother. Inna Allah yajzil mutasaddiqeen. Give us Binyamin back. Now, the scholars write that Yaqub alayhi salatu wassalam had sent a letter to Yusuf alayhi salam. And he wrote from Yaqub, Safiyullah, the son of Ishaq, Dhabihullah, the son of Ibrahim, Khalilullah. And then he wrote, look, I am a prophet, the son of a prophet, the grandson of a prophet. Our family has gone through untold difficulties and hardships. And now we are also afflicted by the plague. But one thing, we have never stolen. We are not a family of thieves. Return my son Binyamin to me. And when Yusuf alayhi salam read this letter, he broke down. He broke down. And this is when he then revealed himself with the permission of Allah to his brothers by asking them a question. هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون? Do you remember what you did to Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? He asked a question. Now the curiosity of the brothers was definitely stoked. How does this king know about the story of our brother Yusuf? There was no WhatsApp that time. Canaan was 250 miles from Egypt, 8 days journey. How does he know? Now they started taking a closer look and they started realizing, hey, this man has got the features. Previously, because of his awe, we were not looking at him all that closely. They asked him a question, أَإِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ Yusuf? Are you Yusuf? Are you Yusuf? And he responds, he says, أَنَا يُوسُفُ وَهَذَا أَخِي. I am Yusuf and this is my brother. We'll take a break. When I come back, we'll continue the discussion from there, inshallah. So, welcome back. We are discussing nuggets from the tafsir of Surah Yusuf. Yusuf alayhi salam, after reading the letter from his father Yaqub, that please return my son to me, Binyamin, O king, we are a family of prophets, we are not a family of thieves. At this time now, with the permission of Allah, he reveals himself to his brothers by asking them a question. هل علمتم ما فعلتم بيوسف وأخيه إذ أنتم جاهلون? Do you remember, do you know what you have done to Yusuf and his brother when you were ignorant? They then become curious. How does he know the story? They say, أَإِنَّكَ لَأَنْتَ Yusuf? Are you Yusuf? Other scholars interpret it and they say, perhaps he told them outright, I'm Yusuf. And out of pure disbelief, they said, are you really Yusuf? He said, أَنَا يُوسُفُ وَهَذَا أَخِي. I'm Yusuf and this is my brother. Now look at his words. At that time, if it was you and I, you would have said, see what you did to me. 40 years, 80 years separated me from my father. Look at where I reached. No. The great servants of Allah, they prefer to talk about Allah's bounties upon them rather than the challenges. He didn't tell them, I went to prison because of you. This happened to me. I was accused of immorality because of you. No, he said, قَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Hey, Allah has been so good to us. Allah has blessed us. The secret, yes, we went through the challenges, but the secret, إِنَّهُ مَن يَتَّقِ وَيَصْبِرْ. Two things. If you have taqwa and you have patience, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, then Allah will not let your good actions go to waste. So he did not rebuke his brothers. He did not run them down. He was never trying to expose them. Actually, he made an excuse for them. He said, إِذْ أَنْتُمْ جَاهِلُونَ. When you did this when you were ignorant, you didn't know better. Now the brothers, they do a mea culpa, as we would say. They say, تَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. By Allah, Allah has favored you upon us. We were jealous. We could say our father was more fond of you, and we could see he was more fond of you because of your qualities. We tried to subvert destiny. We tried to, remove you from the equation. But Allah had a plan for you, and that plan has prevailed. And it's clear as daylight now that irrespective of our jealousies and our machinations and our tricks and our treachery and our lies and our deceit, Allah still allowed you to prosper. You are much better than us. You've been favored upon us. وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. There's no doubt we were wrong. They did a mea culpa and each acknowledgement of guilt. Now, this is at the heart of the tafsir of Surah Yusuf. It's a tragic story of a separation of a young boy who's got no mother from his father for so long by his own brothers. Yet, at a time now when he's in a position to avenge himself, he's the king of Egypt. He could have had them arrested. He could have had them executed. He could have had them exposed. Rather, he says, لا تثريب عليكم اليوم. No blame on you today. Not only have I forgiven you, I've already forgiven you. I only brought this up to show you that Allah has favored me. I don't want to expose you. I've forgiven you, يغفر الله لكم. And now I ask Allah to forgive you. وهو أرحم الراحمين. And He is the most merciful of those who show mercy. Then, they now told him that his father Yaqub had gone blind. So he says, اذهبوا بقميصي هذا فألقوه على وجه أبي يأتي بصيرا وأتوني بأهلكم أجمعين. Listen, take my shirt, put it over the head of my father. His vision will come back. Bring the entire family to Egypt. Let's all reunite. Let bygones be bygones. Let's work on the future. That's the core message of Surah Yusuf. that especially with those closest to you, find it most difficult to forgive the people who are closest to us because their actions hurt us more than the actions of strangers. But it's all the more important to forgive them. Now, the question may come about, how can a shirt bring back someone's vision? The scholars give two explanations. They say that either it was a miracle of Yusuf alayhi salam, like how Nabi sallallahu alayhi salam's finger split the moon. You and I, we go and try it, it doesn't happen. But that was his miracle. Others say this was a very special shirt. When Ibrahim alayhi salam was catapulted into the fire by Namrud, then Jibreel alayhi salam brought a shirt from Jannah. And this was passed on then from Ibrahim alayhi salam to his son Ishaq, to his son Yaqub. Then it was rolled up by Yaqub alayhi salam and put into a container and tied around the neck of young Yusuf as a tawiz, as an amulet for blessings. And when he was separated from his father, then his ordinary shirt was shredded by his brothers, and they put blood, false blood, to show the father that he was attacked by a wolf. That's when Jibreel alayhi salam then clothed him in that shirt. So he had that shirt with him. And that shirt, being a shirt from Jannah, is what returned the vision of Yaqub alayhi salam. Now look at how amazing this is, right? What transpires next. وَلَمَّا فَصَلَتِ الْعِيرُ. The caravan leaves Egypt, 250 miles away from Canaan, where Yaqub alayhi salam is, 8 days journey in those times. Already he says, قَالَ أَبُوهُمْ. Yaqub alayhi salam says to the people around him, إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُفَ لَوْلَا أَن تُفَنِّدُونَ. I can get the fragrance of my Yusuf. I know you people are going to say I'm gone old, I'm senile, I'm babbling, but I can get the fragrance of my Yusuf. Now look at Allah's system. When Allah wants something to happen, it happens. When Yusuf was around the corner in the well, his father couldn't get the fragrance. Here they're leaving with the shirt, not with Yusuf himself, and he can get the fragrance. So the people around him tell him, Tallahi innaka lafi dalalika al-qadim. Hey, you are in your old issue, Now, when فَلَمَّا أَنْجَاءَ الْبَشِيرُ, when the man came with the glad tidings, the eldest son Yehuda, he came with the shirt. فَأَلْقَاهُ عَلَى وَجْهِ أَبِي يَرْتَدَّ بَصِيرًا. He put it over Yaqub alayhi salam's face and his vision came back. He told them, أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ. Did I not tell you? إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. I know that about Allah which you don't know. You had your doubts. I said I will be reunited with Yusuf. I told you Yusuf is alive. Now everything was exposed. So the boys said to their father, Ya abana astaghfir lana dhunubana inna kunna khati'in. Dad, forgive us for our sins. We were definitely wrong. Please forgive us. And then he said, or seek forgiveness for us. Meaning you forgive us and seek forgiveness for us. So he then said, Sawfa astaghfir lakum rabbi. Shortly, I will ask Allah to forgive you. Why not immediately? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was asked this question. He said, Yaqub alayhi salam was waiting for the time of tahajjud. That's when the time of accepted prayer. Prayers are more readily accepted. Others say he was waiting for the day of Jumu'ah. Well, it shows that again, he was so sincere. His own sons did this to his son and to him, but he was willing to forgive them. He said, listen, I will make dua to Allah to forgive you, but not now. I'll wait for the special time, tahajjud time, or for the special day, Jumu'ah. So forgiveness is at the core of the lessons that we learn from Surah Yusuf. Inshallah, the next time we talk, we'll speak about how now the family is reunited and the dua that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam makes. On that note, let's conclude this evening's edition of the Sulaimaan Ravat Show. Until next week, inshallah, when we host Moulana Ahmad Aku on the very important topic of optimism. Fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.